We couldn't have dogs anymore because the owners were really very disrespectful.
Well, the only thing I have that disappear all the time is the no poop signs on the lawn, but they get washed away. I can't wait to see what
Nobody
this
steals it for their own home.
People should
That's where
know.
they go.
People should know. You take the dog out, you pick up the poop. That's
well,
a
you know,
given.
it's a cute little sign, no pee, no poop, but and you can't blame the dogs.
No. No, can't blame the dog at all.
So
Oh,
we are live on YouTube now. And in a
Okay.
minute, assuming Joe isn't going to be here in 1 minute, I'm going to start the webinar. So we'll see public start to join us as well. I never like when we're outnumbered by presenters.
Good evening.
Hey,
Hi, Sandra.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, and you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good seeing your icon.
Hi, John.
John's still connecting to audio.
Oh, okay. Hi, Nick.
Nick.
Good evening.
Hi, Nick. So board members, I have a bit of a dilemma in that my laptop battery is running down very quickly and I forgot my charger at the office. If there's anybody who has experience running a Zoom meeting, I would appreciate your assistance until I get knocked off. And then I would ask if you would run the meeting to the end.
Well, you can try me, Jeremy, if you want.
Joan, have you ever run a Zoom meeting before?
No. There's
I wanna
always a
see.
first time, always a first time for everything.
I'm going to ask again once we start the meeting, and I will very happily appreciate your assistance at that point. I just want to see if anybody has had experience.
All you have to do is mute and unmute people and that sort of thing.
Attendees, you might need to allow them to talk.
I'm sure Joan could figure it out.
We will see if anybody has experience.
Cindy might, is she on?
Not yet.
I do have that experience, but I'm on my phone, so I'm just
Oh.
I'm a little worried about doing it from my phone. I'm not near my computer, but basically, whoever does it, you just click on participant or whomever you want to speak. You go to the participants menu and just click on their name, and then there's a control that allows them to speak.
We have Joe now. I'll let
Hello,
him-
hello everyone.
Hi, Joe. Having a
Hello.
little bit of a dilemma in that my laptop battery is running down and I forgot my charge cord at work. So I'm trying to see if anybody has had experience running a meeting on Zoom.
I have not.
Okay.
How much time do you think you have?
Let's see. I am at 48% and it's gone down 20% in 30 minutes. So not long.
Okay. I don't think
Jeremy,
this is going to run more than an hour, right?
I don't know. I think it's quite likely depending on how many members of the public show. I'm sorry, Cindy.
Okay.
Jeremy, if you'd like to make me a co-host, I'd be happy to be a co-host, but it would be good if there was somebody who's at a computer that could be a host.
Okay, I will ask at various times throughout the meeting. And I'm going to make Joan a co-host too, because she volunteered. And Joe, when you're ready to start, you can just ask me to call the roll.
Okay, if you're ready, I'm ready, so.
Okay. All right, everybody, I am going to mute everybody. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and then acknowledge I called your name, and you will hear me acknowledge your name. If you don't hear that, I did not hear you. And we will start with Joe Canali. Joe, unmute yourself. Joe, that was your camera you turned off.
Joe,
Present.
Thank you. Nick Azadian.
Present.
Thank you. Mohammed Bahi. Joan Body.
here.
Thank you. Mary Eister.
Here.
Thank you. Nicole Huang. John Johnston.
Here.
Thank you. Arelis Martinez. Marilyn Melman. Gloria Rodriguez Navoa. Daniel Murphy. Fred Wolf. Again, if any board member has had experience running a Zoom meeting, please let me know. My battery's running down very quickly. Take it away, Joe.
So Jeremy, do we have any presentations? I can't hear you, Jeremy. You're
Jeremy, you're
muted.
muted.
I muted myself. So we have DEP here. I believe we have DDC here, and we have DSNY here. So we have two presentations today.
All right, who wants to go first?
Hi, everyone. Adriana Kokovic here from DEP. I wouldn't mind kicking off.
Okay, go ahead.
Sure. I had a couple slides. Yeah, if you allow
Hang on
me
one
to.
second. I can make you a co-host. And now you can share your screen.
Thank you. So today I'll be presenting on the Green Infrastructure Program and kind of what's happening in your neighborhood. I'm Adriana Kokovic, the Director of Right-of-Way Green Infrastructure at DEP, and we also have our Managing Director on the call as well, Rupesh Joshi. And feel free to stop me if there's any questions that come up, or we could go over them later. But primarily just wanted to go over the goal of our program, as many of you are familiar with, is to reduce combined sewer overflows into the local waterways. We've been utilizing different types of green infrastructure strategies throughout the city. One that you may be familiar with is our right-of-way rain gardens. They're the most dominant type of green infrastructure, but they do have their limitations as well in regards to certain types of siting constraints. Due to our consent order requirements and milestone schedule, we've been expanding the types of green infrastructure that we're looking into and implementing to maximize the amount of stormwater we are able to capture. And one of those technologies is using precast porous concrete panels. I have a link here. There's a lot of information on our website about these panels, as well as different types of green infrastructure we've been utilizing throughout the city. We've installed 3 larger scale successful pilots of these panels within the parking lanes, 2 in Queens neighborhoods and 1 in the Bronx. We're looking at expanding these on a much larger scale throughout Brooklyn. And here are just some quick facts, and you could see some photos of how the installations look when complete, what the process of construction is. We have all of these precast to ensure the quality and infiltration rates that we need for us to manage as much stormwater as possible and divert it into the storage layer. Here is a plan view of our panel system, what one would typically look like on any given street. So the majority of the block would be covered with the panels. We have some details for if there's any types of interferences that we could break them, or break up sections. But the idea is that we really want to keep a consistent look. They are within a parking lane. They're only 4 feet wide, and typically parking lanes are 6. So they're within that space, and they would cover the majority of the block. They are only 2 feet deep, but by extending them throughout the block, we're managing a significant amount of area. And here's a cross section that shows the way we will be reinstalling the curb, also including this concrete header in the roadway, which helps create a separation between the asphalt and the concrete panels, as well as the subbase of the panel, which includes a stone layer along with some drainage cells, which help create more void space within the stone, which was then topped by this leveling course where the panel sits right on top of. Here are some additional sections that just help show how throughout the block, depending on slope, we'll also have check dams sporadically to ensure that as the water is running into or onto the panels, it's filling up in the individual sections and maximizing the stormwater captured. So I think specifically it said Windsor Terrace, but it looks like we have this other neighborhood, like Sunset Park East, that's also going to overlap with some of the porous pavement we're looking at now in active design contracts. And you may have seen some surveying crews in the area as they've started surveying. And again, these are still very early on in the design process, but these are the areas that, or street segments that have been selected for survey based on meeting subsoil condition requirements for infiltration, as well as siting conditions, clearances to various utilities, and any other criteria that we have for installation. Are there any questions?
Joe, would you like me, do you see the hands up, or would you like me to call on them?
Could you call on them,
Sorry.
please?
Okay, I have Nick Azadian first.
Thank you for sharing this. I have 2 very brief questions. Question number 1 is, in the bottom of that detail, are you allowing essentially the water to enter the precast and then essentially drain through that into essentially whatever the soil strata is?
Yes.
Okay. So then my follow-up question is that if you're intending to install these along the curbside, typically on some of the steeper streets, you end up getting a rather significant river, especially during heavy storm events. So what is the maximum that can infiltrate through? And then is that going to have any kind of corresponding effect on potentially undermining either the street and or the sidewalk in terms of having additional flow going into those locations?
Great question. So you can see our curb here. The curb is standard concrete. It creates this barrier on the sidewalk side. And we're also creating this barrier on the roadway side of solid concrete. The precast portion of the top is the porous panel, which the infiltrate of a panel of one of the infiltration rate of one of these porous panels is 250 inches per hour. However, although the water can get in very quickly, the ultimate infiltration is always going to be limited to what that subsoil permeability is. And that varies, right, depending on the location. And I would say it's maybe around 0.5 inches per hour if the soil is, very sandy and permeable. So,
All right. So then essentially you guys have already thought about this. So we're not going to have to worry about sidewalks and everything else collapsing due to a larger degree of water passing through
absolutely
them.
not. Absolutely not. So the way these will work is they will fill up with water to maximum capacity. And then as they fill up, then it'll go on to the next section down the street. And it'll continue to do that until the system is overflowed, right? There's nowhere else to put the water in the system. And then the overflow is essentially going back into the catch basin where the water would have headed originally.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I have Cindy Vandenbosch next.
Hi, yeah, thank you. I just have a quick question, which is about the durability of the porous concrete or the porous pavements, and what, how frequently you anticipate having to replace the porous concrete in these particular sections. So if you could speak to that, that would be wonderful.
Sure. So we're still monitoring our pilots to determine, the overall life cycle of the individual panels. But because they are working as a system and completely along the block, we're seeing that if for whatever reason there's a heavier sediment load on one section of the panels, there's, other areas that help to make up for that. One of our main focuses is on maintenance, and we're currently monitoring different types of and piloting even different types of maintenance equipment. And the equipment for these it's very specific. It needs a very high pressure water like shot at the panel, at the same time a very high pressure vacuum to suction up all of that water and debris from whatever gets in the panels. So we believe if we continue to maintain the panels, that, that will keep the functionality of them going.
Okay, thank you so much. And then just one question of clarification. Will some of these panels be laid along truck routes? Like I know that 20th Street is a truck route, and are there plans for that? And do you know whether there's enough durability in these panels to support trucks?
So for the typical load, like a fire truck or a garbage truck, there should be no problem. What we are looking at, as long as the subbase is properly compacted during construction and, is following the design details, there shouldn't be any issues. However, we have taken that into consideration and are looking at primarily residential streets for implementation.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
No problem.
I have John DeLuper next.
Jeremy, put me on the list. I can't raise my hand.
Okay, I've got you, John. John DeLuper.
All right. Okay, so thank you for this presentation. I had a follow-up question on the types of streets you mentioned it could go on. I know you spoke about the drainage for rainwater, but my question is, can this be used for other types of drainage? I'm thinking, for instance, 60th Street and 4th Avenue, there's a manhole that's been leaking. It's leaked every so often. You guys have had to make repairs. It, gets water all over the sidewalk or the crosswalks, the bike lane, and the roadway. And can this be used for like that type of drainage too, or only for strictly rainwater?
Well, the way the purpose, right, of them is to collect the rainwater, to reduce the amount of stormwater entering the system, especially to reduce those combined sewer overflows. However, if there's any other type of discharge water or discharge within the roadways, these would absolutely collect them, you know, if they are downstream of that. With that said, I think that leaking manhole needs to be looked at, that it shouldn't be leaking. And if can you provide me the location again? I'll see if we can look into it as well.
Sure. It's 60th Street and 4th Avenue. And this manhole, it's happened probably once a year. Right now, it's been leaking a couple of weeks. And I put in 311, but they closed it as a duplicate. So I assume somebody else had put in one as well.
Okay.
And
Hi.
this is I'm sorry, this is a city manhole?
Yes, it's 60th
Okay.
Street and 4th Avenue, right in the middle of the street.
Okay, we'll get back to the community board. This is Karen Ellis, Director of Community Affairs for DEP. We'll get back to you guys with an update on this tomorrow.
Okay.
This is the first time that I'm hearing of it, but if there's a duplicate ticket in there, then that means that it's already been investigated or it's currently under investigation by our water and sewer operations team. So we should be able to get an update for you guys tomorrow.
All right, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call Joan, I just want to say that Natasha will soon be in this meeting and will take over for me once my battery runs out. I might need our volunteers, Joan and Cindy, to be a bridge into her, but hopefully she'll be here soon enough. Joan, you are next.
Okay. Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for coming back to us with the presentation. It's terrific. I have a few questions. Have you done any pilot work in Brooklyn?
We have not.
Okay. At one presentation, when the tree pits were done, you were going to put tree guards around the tree. Are you still going to do that?
No, we'll no longer be putting those rain gardens in this area. Instead, we'll be utilizing these precast porous concrete panels within the roadway. So some green infrastructure you may see around the city look like a tree pit with that guard around it. But specifically in the areas that overlap with this community board, we'll just be implementing the porous precast panels in the roadway.
Okay, thanks for that one. When are you going to start and where are you going to start?
So right now, we are surveying the locations. The next step will be that the designers will begin design and the review process, that these contracts get reviewed not only by DEP, but by DOT as well as DDC. It also gets sent to all the utilities to ensure no conflicts. So we're looking at probably about another year until these designs are actually bid and construction, may begin.
Wasn't it supposed to start this last year? And because of COVID, it was pushed back to this year. Now it's next year?
We had some delays. Unfortunately, because of COVID, our design contracts were put on pause for a pretty significant amount of time. However, that did give us some time to regroup and look at the area. And we determined that by implementing the porous concrete panels in the roadway, we're going to be able to expand the amount of stormwater capture than we were previously going to achieve, utilizing the typical rain gardens. So it is slightly delayed, but we think that we're going to increase the amount of stormwater we're capturing, as well as once these start construction, I think we're thinking it's going to proceed, in a different way than the rain gardens. These are long blocks that are all constructed at the same time, and the way they'll be able to construct these contracts will be more fluid than the rain gardens, which were, a couple on each block, and they'd have to mob and demob, hopping around to the different areas.
Will you be coming back to us when you have all of this, I guess, settled and you have locations determined?
Yes, I believe once the designs are submitted, at least the first drafts, they get sent as part of a mass mailing, which we can have another meeting at that time.
Okay, thank you much.
Joan, you took all my questions too. I have Nick Azadian next.
I have one follow-up question. In terms of when routine maintenance from either the utilities or your own services need to be done, how do you take these things up so that you could either like pull in a new water line or, get to a sewer or things like that? Does it come up in one piece, or are you basically breaking up the whole section?
They actually are able to come out in pieces. So that's why we like this precast design. They're 5x4 panels and they each have 4 lifting points. So anyone, and we've had this experience with a utility having to work in one of our pilot areas already, right? They were able to come in, lift the panels up, and the sub base for this is mainly just stone. So they're able to very easily go in, do their work, and then backfill the location and replace the panel that was there.
This sounds like a very thoughtful solution and one that you guys should certainly use. I hope that the longevity of the materials that you're using can live up to the rigors of Brooklyn, but otherwise it sounds like a very ingenious way to reduce the amount of storm water that ends up where we don't want it.
Joe, I see no additional hands up.
Okay. So we'll proceed to the next presentation. That's DSNY.
Yes, thank you, Adriana, and everybody from DEP and DDC.
Thanks so much.
We look forward to hearing about what locations have been chosen so we can let our constituents know what to expect specifically on their blocks.
Absolutely, and thank you all for the great questions.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming.
Karen. I have Richard Day from DSNY here.
Yep. Hello. Thanks for having me. Oh.
Thank you, Richard. Joe, would you like to introduce, or I can, I guess.
Oh, okay. This is Richard Day from the Sanitation Department, New York Sanitation Department. Doing a presentation on organics composting, organics collection.
Thank you.
Take away, Richard. Sure. Would it be possible to get permission to share my screen?
Yep, you got it. Give me one moment.
Thanks.
And you can share your screen now.
Okay. So, hi. Thanks for having me. My name is Richard Day, as you've heard like 3 times by now. I work on the curbside composting service at the Department of Sanitation, doing community outreach and education. And so I'm just going to talk to you about what curbside composting is, provide you with a few updates, and then take whatever questions you have after that. Let's go through some background on what curbside composting is and then talk about the service itself. So first, what is curbside composting, right? Maybe you haven't heard of it. It's also known as organic collection or the brown bin program even. And so what it is a free voluntary service provided by the Department of Sanitation to recycle food scraps and yard waste. So that's what it is at its heart. It's another recycling program, but instead of glass bottles, it's actually going to be food waste, yard waste, and toilet paper. So DSNY provides brown bins to buildings that sign up, and we collect their composting material on a weekly basis. And we take this material to our different facilities for processing, where it's turned into compost or clean energy. I feel like, okay, that sounds nice, but why should I do that? That's because food scraps, food filled paper, and yard waste, compostable materials, actually comprise 1/3 of all the trash that New Yorkers throw out. So I just want you to think about that for a second. We as a city dispose of over 12,000 tons of material a day, and right now 1/3 of that is actually compostable. unfortunately, in most cases, all that's still going into the trash, which isn't great because what that means is we're paying to send it out to landfills in other parts of the country where it's going to sit there, rot, release methane, which harms the environment, right? But we can avoid that by composting. So by composting your food scraps, you can actually help to keep your neighborhood clean and healthy. So believe it or not, this can actually help to reduce rodents and pests and reduce street litter. And how it does that is really just by putting your food scraps into a more secure container. So instead of going into a black garbage bag that's really easily torn open by, say a rat that smells something in there, going into one of our secure brown bins that actually latches shut, lock shut. When they somehow do smell something in there, they can't get to it. And that's the important thing. So they're not going to be able to smell it. First of all, they can't get to it, right? So it's staying locked up inside, not all over your sidewalk, so you're not feeding. That's the first thing. And you're also helping to make New York City more self-sufficient and more resilient. As I said, when you compost, you're reducing the amount of waste that's sent to landfills. And in the process, you're creating compost, which isn't soil itself. It's a soil amendment. Think of it as, it's basically like a fertilizer, right? You would add it to your soil to help promote healthy plant growth, right? So you're creating compost that goes back to our parks and to New York City residents. You're also creating clean energy. So if you see this photo on the bottom right, these big silver things are digester eggs that our fine folks from DEP operate actually at their wastewater treatment plant at Newtown Creek. And so we'll feed food scraps into there where they'll break down, they'll undergo a process of anaerobic digestion and produce gas that we can then harness and then use that to do things like power homes. So really what I'm trying to say is you can either not compost and we can literally pay for it to harm the environment, or you can compost and have these other great benefits like pest reduction and compost and clean energy. As far as what goes in the bin, like I said, there's three main categories. There's food scraps, there's food sold paper, and there's leaf and yard waste. So food scraps are things like apples, bananas, fruits, vegetables, processed foods, spoiled foods, meat, bones, and dairy can also go into your brown bin. A lot of our food scrap drop-off sites, if you happen to use those, won't accept those materials. They operate on smaller scales. That stuff doesn't break down as quickly or as easily. But we operate on much larger scales, so we can hit the conditions to break down those tough materials really easily. So we want them. Food sold paper means like a paper napkin or plate or dirty paper plate, tea bag, coffee filter, even a dirty pizza box. The dirty part of it can go into your brown bin. And leaf and yard waste is pretty self-explanatory. If you have a yard, you do some trimming back there, or you have a house plant, do some trimming with, that can go into your brown bin. There's no need to separate any of these materials from one another. They can all go into the same brown bin if they're all going to be the same thing in the end. Okay. And just go a little bit deeper into what goes in the bin. Surprisingly enough, it's actually okay to put plastic bags in your brown bin. A lot of you probably think the contrary because a lot of our old messaging said, please don't do that. But we found out that that's how a lot of people do participate. So what we did is we added machinery to our composting facilities that actually separates out those plastic bags from your food waste, meaning they're not going to contaminate anything. In addition to that, any BPI approved compostable items are also fine to put into your brown bin. What that means is they adhere to some compostability standards and have been vetted by BPI, which is a third party. So those would be things like plates or bowls, cups, cutlery. They'll say BPI certified on them in one way or another. Those can go into your brown bin. We can compost them, no problem. Things that are not okay to put in are, diapers, any hygienic products, animal waste, wrappers or packaging, your foam, and no metal, glass, plastic recycling should go into your brown bin either. So just stick to the food scraps, food filled paper, leaf and yard waste. If you're new to everything, there's a little phrase that can help you out. That's if it grows, it goes. So if you, have an apple or banana, something that grows, it can go into your brown bin. It works well with simple foods like that, not really so well with things like a napkin. But if you're just getting used to composting, it can be helpful. And then participation is actually probably way easier than you think it is. All we want you to do is separate out your food scraps, put them into your brown bin, and then put your brown bin out on the curb for collection. So we don't need you to create a compost pile in your backyard or anything like that. We just want you to give us the material so we can do the hard work for you. So it's really the same thing as recycling, that glass bottle. You have your glass bottle, you put it into the right bin, and you put that out on the curb on the right day to be recycled. So same idea there. All right, that's sort of background on what curbside composting is. Now I'll talk about the service itself a little bit. So this needs to be amended a little bit. So collection was suspended in 2020 due to COVID, budget cuts related to COVID. But we resumed in October 2021. That's when our first truck started rolling again. I'm sure this will come up in the questions, but our budget looks like it will probably be cut for expansion again moving forward, but we can talk about that when we get there. In any case, the new model that we came back with requires buildings to sign up for service, even if they had it in the past. So even if you have a brown bin in your home and you composted previously, we need you to sign up on our website or call 311 so you can get service again. And that's for two main reasons. One is we want to understand who wants to participate in this program because it is voluntary. And then we also want to be able to better communicate with folks who are participating so we can let you know, if there's a service delay because of the snow today, or, there's this holiday coming up, sit out this day instead. We can communicate those larger programmatic changes or disruptions as they come up, which is something that we really weren't able to do in the past. So as I mentioned, right now, we're currently in 7 community boards. 7 community boards are currently receiving service. So that's Bronx 8, Brooklyn 1, 2, 6, and 7, and then Manhattan 6 and 7. And so right now our expansion is on pause, but these community boards, yours included, will continue to receive service as they did otherwise. So no, you shouldn't be concerned at this point. So what'll happen is you'll sign up. We'll notify you when service is going to be coming to your building, and make sure that you have everything that you need for when service does begin. So that includes your bin, any educational materials, and any support that you might need for tenants in your building, residents in your building. Participants must use our brown bin, like I mentioned earlier. We can replace that if we need to. And then just like your regular trash and recycling, we're going to collect this on a weekly schedule. We actually collect compost once a week. So just so you're aware of that, is once a week collection. So when service is going to start for you? Well, we add buildings on a monthly basis. And so we'll notify you when you've been added to a route and let you know what your start date actually is. But if your building, if your sign up form is missing information, or approval from building management, if you do live in a large apartment building, you'll get placed on a wait list until we get that information or approval that we do need. We'll let you know, we'll reach out, say, hi, you're on our wait list for right now because we're missing this. And then we'll work to get it so you can get added to the next one. We really do want everyone to compost again, so encourage you to talk to your neighbor, talk to your friends, get them to sign up as well so we can service them. But before your building has service, we still want you to compost. If you're fortunate enough to have a backyard, you want to give that a shot, backyard composting shot, that's great. We're happy with that. Most folks will make use of our food scrap drop-off sites. There are 4 in your community board, if I'm not mistaken. So you can go to nyc.gov/drop-food-scraps. You'll see a map much like this one on the bottom. This is outdated, so there aren't as many green dots as there should be. Each of those represents a different food scrap drop-off site. Each with their own hours of operation and materials that they accept. So if you do plan to drop material off at one, just check before you go that it's open, that it's actually taking, that it accepts what material you're bringing to it. So you're not stuck holding, some food scraps when you go to the grocery store or something like that. So just check before you go. Well, I can say there. And then I just wanted to run through some of these common misconceptions because I don't really get a chance to speak to you too often, and I just want to make sure that we clear the air around some of these. So the first misconception is that composting attracts rats and other pests, and hopefully by now you know it doesn't. Using the brown bin properly can actually help to reduce rodent activity. It's important to remember that you're not producing any new food waste. You're actually just putting existing food waste into a more secure container. So it's not going to increase rodent activity at all, especially if you're using it correctly. A lot of folks think that composting is complicated, and now you should know that it's not. We just want you to put your food scraps food-filled paper and your yard waste into our brown bins, and we'll do the rest. A lot of people think that you can't compost meat, bones, or dairy products. And again, that's because our food scrap drop-off sites don't typically accept those materials. Some of them do, but most don't. But that can go into all of our brown bins, so don't worry about that. If your material gets sent to an industrial scale facility, that can break down that material, no problem, into compost. So please give it to us. People think you can't put plastic bags in your brown bin, but you can. Our facilities have machinery that can separate out your bags from the food scraps so they don't contaminate anything. And this last one we get sometimes, so I just included it. People think that compost gets thrown out. It doesn't. You know, a lot of our trucks, or rather, all of our trucks look the same. They're all white trucks. They go up and down your block. They collect, you know, your trash. They collect your recycling. They'll collect your compost as well. So just because you see your compost going to the back of a white truck doesn't mean it's getting thrown out. Additionally, some of our trucks are split back or split bodied, so they have one container on one side, one on the other. Those can be for different materials. So you might have a truck that does trash and compost. So you might see your trash on one side, compost on the other. Long story short, we're not throwing out your compost. We are composting it. We wouldn't put, you know, all of our effort to educating folks if we were just going to throw it out. So I hope you don't think that we do. And that's all. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have now.
Other questions?
Folks,
Jeremy?
please use the raise hand function, and I will call on you in the order in which you raise your hands. I have John DeLuper first.
All right. Hey, so thanks for this information. And I love the goals of what you're trying to do. And as somebody who's used this, I agree that it makes the trash less stinky and is less attractive to the rodents. So good news all around on that front. But I want to ask you about something I've experienced with this, is that my neighbors, you know, before, when you first rolled it out in this community board, they were very hesitant about the program. But we were able to get about half the folks on the block to do it. And then, you know, when you canceled the program, now that it's come back, just 2 houses now do this program. And when I talk to my neighbors, you know, they're very skeptical. They're saying, oh, you know, the city cut it once, the mayor doesn't want to do it, and it's an inconvenience to sort it. So with that in mind, do you guys have like a plan to kind of combat these perceptions and to get people to do it? I know that you're saying you're looking for volunteers, but I think if there's, it has to be more than that, because so many people now they're very skeptical about this program, and they think that that the city's not committed to it.
Yeah, and I think that's understandable. It's tough, you know. The budget cuts were, you know, initially we slowed our expansion, or paused our expansion in 2018 because we needed to revisit, you know, how efficient it was. We had to cut the program, unfortunately, due to emergency budget cuts related to COVID. And now we're sort of negotiating with the current budget with the new administration, what service will look like moving forward. So I definitely understand the hesitancy. But, you know, I think it's important to really impress upon people how important this is. Like I said, a third of the waste in New York City can be composted. And if you're not doing that, you're frankly just actively harming the environment, in my opinion. So it's I don't know. That's what I would appeal to is you know, just telling them the importance of what this is. And it really isn't so different from, you know, a regular recycling program. You know, instead of those glass bottles, it's, you know, a half-eaten hamburger or something like that. You're bringing it to the trash anyway. Why not bring it to your brown bin? So it's really once you understand what the process is, it's really not such a big deal to do it. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, but there's no overall plan to kind of to like communicate some of these goals other than you as a DOS representative, you know, coming to us and telling us to tell our neighbors.
Yeah, so we you know, we do have an outreach team that does events as well. We do reach out to community boards, we reach out to elected officials, we have print materials, we put things on social media. So we do our best to get the word out there and explain what composting is to folks and the importance of it. So if that's what you're trying to get to, that, you know, we do that. We do what we can with the budget that we have. Is really the answer to that question.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I have Mary Eister next.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. It was informative, and I'm wondering if one of the problems that I'm concerned about, you've already answered, and that is our bins haven't been picked up. We told residents to stop putting compost in them because they're overflowing. And this is over a period of at least a month, if not longer. And I've noticed that all up and down the block. Maybe it's the problem that you alluded to, that people were not aware of the fact that they had to re-register. And so buildings like ours that were in the program previously maybe haven't re-registered. I'll have to check on that. But if that's the case, it's a big problem all up and down 41st Street and 7th Avenue, because those bins sit out there. One set of 6 or 8 bins set out for the entirety of a week and never got picked up. The other problem that I noticed in the past when they were picking them up, and this is a problem with all recycling, is the passersby who toss all manner of garbage into the compost bin. And sometimes that caused, I guess it caused the sanitation workers not to take it because there was plain trash thrown in on top. You know, coffee cups, candy wrappers, that kind of stuff. Do you have any suggestions for how to deal with that?
Yeah, so one, I was remiss in not mentioning that we did send out mailers to each address that was eligible to sign up again for curbside composting. We did that last year, and we actually sent another round of mailers out earlier this month. So that's another way that we are trying to get folks to sign up. We're doing, again, what we can. As far as the issue with folks throwing trash into your bin, my best advice to you would be to put it out as close as you can to collection time. So your materials collected on the 6 to 2 shift. So really, we tell folks to put out your bins the night before collection. So maybe, you know, as late as you can before you go to bed that day. Also, actually making sure that the bins are closed, you know, appropriately would help too. They're a little bit more annoying to get open than your standard garbage pail. So, you know, maybe it's not worth the effort for someone. Unfortunately, there's not really much we can do beyond that for you. Yeah, maybe, you know, have a little light sensor if you can that turns the light on when people walk past, but unfortunately, I don't have a great solution to that. What I can say is that our sanitation workers are still supposed to collect it. No matter what it looks like, they're still supposed to collect it. Our facilities are capable of screening out material. So don't be alarmed if someone does put something in there that doesn't belong in there. It can get screened out. Our sanitation workers are supposed to service it regardless. So if you do have a missed collection, report it by going to 311 or by going to our website, filling out the appropriate form on there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I have Nick Azadian next.
In the same vein as what Mary had mentioned, all manner of things end up in my compost bins. And one of the things that we've requested of your department is to basically flip the thing over after you guys collect it. So that way it doesn't become another receptacle. That's helped. So I don't know if that can be a standard policy. The second question I have really just boils down to the economics of this. At which point does this make economic sense for the city to do? Because if you're doing a sporadic number of addresses, I can't see how that makes any sense to the point where you'll lose that budgetary conversation with the mayor. What percentage of the neighborhood do you need to participate before you actually see an economic benefit to the city?
So that's a great question. Me personally, I can't answer that in detail, but I can point you to a great report from the Independent Budget Office. They published a report that goes into the economics as well as everything else around the curbside program. So I would highly suggest you check that out. I can speak to the current routing of the program being more efficient. Again, efficiency was sort of the name of the game with this iteration of the program. So previously, we had trucks driving throughout your entire neighborhood, right? They went up and down every single block, weren't sure who was going to be setting out, right? And so what that really meant was that they were driving up and down a lot of blocks where people just weren't participating. So maybe, out of 10 blocks, like 3 of them were, or something like that. So then they're just wasting that additional time going up and down those other 7 blocks, right? Not a great use of time. This current iteration is a point-to-point system, so we're going straight from one building that we know is going to participate to another building that we know is going to participate. So we're eliminating that time, that downtime, not downtime, but you understand what I mean, in the middle. So that's
I got you.
how
So
we're moving towards
basically,
efficiency in that way.
if you essentially segregate out the cost of operating your main composting facility because you figure you're going to be somewhat operational on a citywide basis, you've now eliminated the waste essentially associated with having the trucks drive around without really having the function.
Right. Yeah. And so
Okay.
we still need, a minimum.
I mean,
I'm
what
not
do
the
you,
person to
you're
make the
holding what, a
decision.
couple tons in the truck. So as long as you fill it, then who cares? And it's fine.
Yeah, so I'm not the one who makes the decisions about when a route comes into existence or not. We've got an entire, bureau dedicated to that. But they do look at things like housing stock, geography, anticipated tonnage when they are creating those routes. And so, when they look at all that as a whole, they can say, all right, we can get an efficient route here. Let's start with the truck. So it's not just, throwing stuff at a board and seeing what sticks, or just saying, let's go for this. There is definitely thought behind it.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions,
I
Jeremy?
don't see additional hands up, so let me just say last call. Nobody else has raised their hand, Joe.
Okay, then I guess that concludes today's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for participating. There were some really great questions asked, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have an attendee. Joe, we do have an attendee with a hand up.
Okay.
I have Edna Hoover. Edna, you can unmute yourself now.
Yeah, what have you done to try and convince large apartment buildings to participate?
So, large apartment buildings are tricky, right? Because you can't just go there and talk to someone usually. But what'll happen is folks in large apartment buildings will typically sign up. What we'll do then, because as I mentioned earlier, large apartment buildings do require building management approval. I guess I'll define building management.
That's the problem.
Right. So building management means, a property owner, a managing agent,
Right.
superintendent, board member.
Right.
So what we'll do is when a tenant signs up in a large building, we'll ask for, that building management information from the tenant so that we can reach out on their behalf. And
I tried this several times and was told that we don't qualify.
That's
online.
The phrase that you should have heard. You live in CB7?
I guess so. We're on Park Circle. It's 200 families, 200 apartments. 10-16 Ocean Parkway.
Ocean Parkway. Okay, I'll look into that and see what the issue is there. But as long as you're in CB7, you should.
I was thinking that it would be helpful if we had some kind of publicity that we could forward to the landlord or super to have them, deal with it.
Yeah, so we do a weekly webinar. That's actually me. I usually run that. That's aimed at building management for large buildings, and it sort of dispels some of the myths that I just went over. The misconception. It also goes.
Yeah, but that means they have to be willing and to spend the time to sign. They're not going to do that.
We also have it available online. The slides available online that they can check out on their own time if they would like to do that.
That does not reach the kind of management that we're dealing with. We need either paper or somebody to come down and talk to the building people.
We're happy to talk to folks. We've gone to board meetings before, or tenant meetings, monthly meetings, yearly meetings as well. We're happy to attend anything and speak to whoever you can put us in touch with.
How do we get in touch with you?
So if you go to our events request page, you can request through there, on.nyc.gov/event request. Sorry, that's a lot to mistaken in one sentence, or you can just email me at rday@csny.
Can you post that in the somewhere in the chat?
There's not really a chat function.
There isn't a chat function. Edna, we've been in touch with you before. I could share Richard's contact information with you.
Excellent, excellent.
Richard, will we be able to share that with other folks as well?
Yes,
sorry. There is a Facebook page for the building. And so if you give me the contact information, I did put this meeting up on the Facebook page, but if I have some kind of contact information, I can post it up there.
If I may interrupt, I'm curious, is this a co-op?
No.
Okay.
Tenants.
Thank you, Edna. I have, I guess we just had a low. We have another hand up. I have Nicole Huang.
Hi, how are you? So before pandemic, we was doing the outreach for the composting. A lot of residents say the compost bin is too small for them. And that's why they don't want to use.
Okay, so we can get you an additional bin if you go on our website. If you're currently participating, especially if you're in a large building, you can go, sorry, I don't remember the offhand what it is, but if you go to nyc.gov/curbside composting, there's like an FAQ thing you can go through there to get to the bin request.
So yeah, any location for Sunset Park, they can just drop off. Do you guys open for the location like Manhattan? They can drop off the compost stuff there.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
So
drop-off sites in Sunset Park.
Yes.
Oh, there are. Yeah, we have drop-off sites in Sunset Park. We've got them. I think we've got at least one in each community district, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe we're missing one. So if you go to nyc.gov/drop food scraps, you'll be able to see that whole map of them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nicole. And last call again. Joe, I see no additional hands up.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. That concludes our meeting. I would encourage everyone to participate. I recently signed up, but it took 2 months for me to get a response from DSNY. So I would say if you do that, be patient.
Well, hopefully it'll be less than 2 months moving forward, but thank you for your support. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Night.